Hello, and welcome to the book of Leviticus.
And we're back. Another book we read in a day and make comments on together. Leviticus, third book of the Bible. Leviticus because it's a book about the Levites and all their responsibilities and offering sacrifices and what they wear and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the observant of you will notice that Levi is one of the sons of Jacob or Israel, and that Moses and Aaron are in his line. So they're descendants from Levi, and Aaron is the priests. These are mostly instructions for priests.
Yep. And it's not too bad of a read. It's a couple hours, and it makes for some interesting things. And I came up with a whole page full of little observations. Then I think you would too if you read through and said, "Hey, I wonder about these things." I want to start off by saying that as I read through, I tried to write down each new offering that was mentioned in Leviticus. And so we hear of the burnt offering, the grain offering, the peace offering, the sin offering, the guilt offering, the thanksgiving offering, the free will offering, the wave offering, and the votive offering.
The votive?
Yep.
Interesting. I don't think mine said votive, but
I guess we probably have to find it. I didn't put a reference to specific for that, but it was just interesting to see all these different offerings and the sacrifices that went along with them and how the rules were different for the different sacrifices. So,
yeah. What are the sacrifices for? For me, I had a very clear thing that I thought it seemed like there were two different types of sacrifices, two different types of offerings. What
would you say they were?
I thought it seemed like there were some that were to please God and some that were for atonement or redemption.
To appease God. Yeah.
Not to appease, but to please.
No, both please and then appease.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't. Certainly, there was the sense of presenting a pleasant aroma to God, to please Him, and definitively in response to sin and guilt. But there were also other, like the Thanksgiving offering and the wave offering. Those are. The wave offering, from what I understood, it was the first fruits of your crop that you waved in celebration that God had given you crops.
And they do it with chicken breast or the breast of some animal. And it says he has Aaron and all his sons take the breast of the animal and present a wave offering. I thought that was interesting.
And Leviticus isn't clear on what each of the offerings are in response to. So
it talks a lot about how to do the offerings and not a lot about why you should do the offerings.
Right.
I think there are some times where it says why. If someone's unclean, if they have leprosy, if they're sick, if they're growing white hairs and they're young.
Right, but it just starts out with the burnt offering.
Yeah.
It doesn't say a burnt offering because of, verse 2, speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, when any man of you brings an offering to the Lord, you shall bring your offering of animals from herd or flock. It's an offering, if his offering is a burnt offering, if it's a burnt offering. Well, that's, so it's unclear, and probably you could look at places and there's somebody I'm sure has written a book about the different offerings in the book of Leviticus, but that I don't think is I don't think that ought to be the take home from Leviticus. We know there are a lot of different offerings that are required and recommended and to be made in the tabernacle, but the message, the bigger message of Leviticus, from my perspective, was no matter how much we sacrifice, it's never really enough. And there's so much that we would need to do to be forgiven and accepted by God, that it's an impossibility. So for me, Leviticus stands out as saying, go ahead and try. go ahead and try. And it even has reference numerous times to if a person sins and doesn't know it,
Yeah.
and then he becomes aware of it. Then he has to do these offerings, which I thought was an interesting sidelight that not all sin is intentional, but it's still sin.
Yeah.
So
That's interesting. I think for me, I had a different sort of takeaway reading this whole book.
okay,
Reading it all at once, I think that is a fair takeaway. But I think for me, the takeaway was more redemptive, more community based, and more full of God's love. That God has this expectation that He's laid out in Genesis and Exodus that people are going to sin, that people desire to sin from their young age. And like, how do we move forward from that? And God can't be in the presence of sin. He doesn't want to be in the presence of sin.
and along with that, there are a number of times in Leviticus where the result of the sacrifice it was their sins were forgiven.
Yeah.
So the sacrifices are necessary and forgiveness is granted.
Yeah. Yeah. That, as you pointed out yesterday, that God describes himself as someone who forgives, that now we see what does that mean. And what it means is when you've sinned, something has to die. And like, that's the nature of sin, that the wages of sin are death. And
sin always costs something.
yeah. And so now when you sin, what's going to die? It should be you. But luckily, our God is a forgiving God. And so he'll let you take a ram. He'll let you take a sheep. He'll let you take a goat. He'll let you take a couple of pigeons. And you have to watch them die. You have to lay your hand on their head while you kill them. And while you watch them die, you think, wow, thank you, God, for this not being me. Thank you for your saving grace.
I thought it was interesting that when they do the two birds, one of them dies and the other one is set free.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah, I had a question about that, which maybe you know the answer to. My Bible said that one is for Azazel and one is for the Lord. And the one that's for Azazel is set free.
we looked it up. I don't think that the New American Standard said it for Azazel. But we could check that. Maybe not be able to find it in this discussion, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So let's get on to my first note was in chapter 2.
Okay.
And it was actually chapter 2, verse 11, because I thought it was interesting that it said, "No grain offering which you bring to the Lord shall be made with leaven, for you shall not offer up in smoke any leaven or any honey as an offering by fire to the Lord." And then he goes on and says, all the offerings have to have salt in verse 13. "You shall season with salt, so that salt of the covenant of the Lord your God shall not be lacking from your grain offering." I don't know why.
Yeah.
No honey, but salt.
Yeah, my guess was burnt honey doesn't smell good. And maybe burnt fat and burnt meat still has, like, good smells to it.
Yeah.
It seems like that's the point of this offering. These burnt offerings, these grain offerings, these peace offerings, those three to me stood out as this desire to be pleasing to the Lord, that like, God will please you, and after we please you, can you give us peace? After we please you, can we grow better grain? After we please you, like, can our food be good? Yeah. And that's God's response is, like, don't do the things that aren't going to please me. Don't put honey in it. I don't want honey. It's gross, it's sticky, it smells bad after it burns.
And still in chapter 2, verse 14, I don't know what the ESV says, but from my perspective, being a northerner, God adds a little southern flavor here because he has grits.
Interesting.
To me, it just, these words just show up in Scripture that you've read through numerous times, and then all of a sudden, wow, I didn't know there were grits in the Bible.
Yeah. I mean, mine does not say grits. Mine says, "If you offer a grain offering of first fruits to the Lord, you shall offer for the grain offering of your first fruits, fresh ears, roasted with fire, crushed new grain.
Okay. So anyway, it was just,
Yeah.
it's not significant.
Yeah, an interesting way that at least the translators are writing
Yeah.
things to make it understandable for, you're reading the New American Standard Bible, and, probably at this point your version is 30 years old or something, but
50.
yeah. So, um, whatever, it's expecting that people in the U.S. 50 years ago should understand your translation.
Well, people who had a high school education, New American Standard was translated with direct equivalence. They sought to to have a Greek or Hebrew words and figure out what the direct equivalents in the English word were. So, as opposed to the New International, which had dynamic equivalents, which tried to make it more understandable to the language of the time the New International was done, which was also in the 70s.
Yeah.
So when I was doing translation work, I would check myself with the New American Standard because it was more likely to have the word as it would be normally translated. If you said this word means X, so
Yeah, and that's always the difficulty with translation. As a person that speaks multiple languages, that's never, it never works to just, take a Spanish sentence and then translate all the words directly, because it doesn't ever make sense, or rarely does it make sense because the grammar structure is different. So
now the New American Standard did adjust the grammar structure, but they tried to say if there's a Hebrew word that has an English word, we'll use that within the proper grammar. But anyway, so the first few chapters are about the laws of different sacrifices, on the different offerings. And I got into chapter 4. You got any into chapter 3?
No.
I'm into chapter 4. I've actually got 5 different things I'm noted on here. Verse 13. If the whole congregation of Israel commits error, and the matter escapes the notice of the assembly, and they commit any of the things which the Lord has commanded not to be done, they become guilty. That was, institutional sin.
Yeah.
The whole assembly, and nobody notices. It just sort of slides in there, and I think that is something that mankind is prone to, that we just come to accept. Oh, this is the way it is, and of course we can do that without critical thinking about whether it's pleasing to God.
Yeah.
Until somebody says, did you notice that? And then we understand our guilt.
Yeah, and we have those discussions, of course, all the time in modern day, America, where people are talking about, we have institutional racism or sexism or, whatever else it may be.
Yep.
But it's in a different sort of light because it's not based around a figurehead God. It's based around, we want to be doing good, but people have different ideas of what good is.
Right.
And, at least for the Israelites in this time, it was kind of nice because they had God and Moses, writing down exactly what they viewed as good. Don't sleep with your brother's wife. Don't sleep with your father's wife. Don't sleep with your father's sister.
Don't sleep with your sister.
Yeah.
Don't sleep with your brother.
Yeah. Don't sleep with your grandchildren.
Yeah. So the other 4 that I have from chapter 4, verse 20 ends with they will be forgiven. Verse 26 ends with he will be forgiven. Verse 31 ends with he will be forgiven. Verse 35 he will be forgiven. That's that's 4 times in one chapter where the result of offering sacrifices is forgiveness. God is a forgiving God, and sometimes psychologically we don't adapt to that. We hold on to guilt that God is not holding on to us, holding to us.
Yeah, it's so powerful too. I think for me, just that whole thing, lay his hand on the head of this offering and kill it. I think just to have your hand on someone's head or something's head while it dies is powerful. But then even while you're killing it, because of something you've done, I think that puts the weight of what you've done so powerfully on that, and then the weight of forgiveness, I think, gets to be uh, so clear, so powerful too.
Yeah, yeah, good point. In chapter 5, one of the things I really liked about chapter 5, which talks about the law of guilt offerings, is that throughout this, as it tells what you have to do for a guilt offering, there is always room for the poor.
Mm.
So if you can't afford this, then try this. If you can't afford that, then try this.
Mm-hmm.
And God doesn't leave you out because you're not wealthy.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
I thought was pretty cool.
Even I like it that he says, I don't know if he says it here. I think he does. If anyone hears a public adjuration, don't have partiality towards the poor or towards the rich.
He does say that a couple of times.
That it's even part of the command is like, not even just God doesn't have partiality towards the poor or the rich, but you shouldn't either. And if you are, then that's that's a sin of its own.
Again, in verse 17 of chapter 5, there's guilt even if you're unaware that you did it. This unintentional sin is still sin.
Yeah.
And in chapter 6, talking about guilt offerings, the first 7 verses talk about restitution. When a person sins and acts unfaithfully, deceives his companion in regard to a deposit or security entrusted him, or through robbery, or he's extorted his companion, or he's found he lost and lied, what was lost and he lied about it and sworn falsely, so that he sins in regard to any of these things a man may do, then it shall be, when he sins and becomes guilty, that he shall restore what he took by robbery, or what he got by extortion, or deposit, which was entrusted to him, or the lost thing which was found. It goes on and just says, if you sin against another person, you have to restore it. That issue of restitution. And I don't think we're always good about restitution. We get away with stuff and, oh, I'm sorry. Well, how about I'm sorry and I'm going to pay you back. I'm going to, reward you, or whatever the right word is, for what I've done. So, then they go on to chapter 7, and all of a sudden, this is where he introduces a Thanksgiving offering, and a Thanksgiving peace offering, which is kind of interesting. Again, there's not a lot of explanation for why. So, it's in verse 11. Now this is the law of the sacrifice of peace offerings, which shall be presented to the Lord. If he offers it by way of thanksgiving, then along with the sacrifice of thanksgiving, he shall offer unleavened cakes mixed with oil, blah, blah, blah. It's a peace offering, and now we're doing it with thanksgiving, which is interesting because, particularly if you have sensitivity towards animals, all the other offerings, you're killing something.
Yeah.
And now you're giving this grain offering with thanksgiving.
Yeah.
We're at peace and we're giving thanksgiving. Just kind of an interesting dynamic there.
Yeah. I think this isn't the only place it's mentioned, but at the beginning of chapter 7 it says that the priest shall throw its blood against the sides of the altar. I thought that was interesting.
Oh, and
it sounds gross.
And it changed. They put it on the horns of the altar. They put it on the side, on the front, and depending on which sacrifice you're talking about, they sacrifice the animal in a different spot.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really interesting. That it isn't like, okay, here's the place where we sacrifice all the animals.
Yeah.
No, sometimes you do it on the right, sometimes you do it in the front, sometimes you do it outside. So,
yeah, sometimes you do it over a running water.
Yeah.
So.
And then I went to 737 because it, I think, is the first time that ordination is mentioned, which is also I think filling, like it's similar, I think, to maybe it is in the filling of the Holy Spirit. Uh, and then they talk about in chapter 8 that whole chapter is basically the consecration, the ordination of the priests.
Yeah.
Which is there's some interesting dynamics there. In part, you start to see the number 7 becoming significant. So they sprinkle 7 times. They after their ordination, they have 7 days that they're kept apart, and they have both a ram of burnt offering and a ram of ordination. That's verses 18 and verse 22. Just fascinating because ordination is something which we don't have a good grasp on in the church. What does it mean? Who has it? And how do we respect it? Those types of things. But obviously, it's very important.
Yeah, especially within the Protestant church, there's not clear lines drawn. But even within the Catholic and the Orthodox churches, the lines of what ordination is and how it happens are fairly blurry. Where in different orders you can be ordained in different ways, and it's interesting that they have just a pretty clear way. You put on these certain clothes, we're going to pour oil on your head, we're going to
sprinkle you with blood.
Yeah, we're going to put blood on your earlobe, on your thumb, on your toe, and then we're going to wash it off with oil, and you do these certain sacrifices.
Yeah. So jump ahead to chapter 10, and the first 3-4 verses are on.
Scary.
They are. So 2 sons of Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, offer what is called strange fire, and rather than being a pleasing aroma to God, the fire leaps out and consumes them.
Yeah.
And kills them, and that whole chapter is really, first of all, that's scary because I don't think these guys knew they were screwing up. They just weren't following the rules.
Yeah.
And I guess they probably knew they weren't following the law, but I'm pretty sure they didn't expect that result. And throughout that chapter then, Moses tells Aaron, you can't mourn. And, that's just, it's the way it is. And they take, and it seemed like they kind of hid that from the rest of the people, that these 2 guys were killed because they offered strange fire, and we're going to just have them taken out, and we're going to take care of it without having a big show of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Mine, at least in verse 1, says they offered unauthorized fire before the Lord, which he had not commanded them. So some sort of line is drawn between what they're allowed to do in the presence of God, not just that they're not allowed to do the things that he commands them not to do, but they're not allowed to do the things that he doesn't command them to do.
And then, let's see, I went to verse 16 following. Another place where Moses searches for the goat of the sin offering, and he can't find it. He becomes angry, and they have this discussion where, again, they didn't do something that they were supposed to do.
Right.
And Moses ultimately, Aaron talks to Moses and says, well, we really tried. When these things happened to me, if I had eaten this sin offering today, would it have been good in the sight of the Lord? And Moses backs off of his anger. It's just kind of an interesting dynamic of the brothers talking about what happened to that goat that was supposed to be taken care of. I don't know the significance of it, but I had an interesting reaction to chapter 11, verses 9 and following. These are the foods that you can eat, which birds and which animals you can eat, which fish you can eat. And that was the interesting thing. For me, it was just a thought. So it says, "You may eat whatever is in the water, all that have fins and scales, those in the water, in the sea or in the rivers, you may eat. But whatever is in the seas and in the rivers that does not have fins and scales, among all teeming life in the water, and among all the living creatures that are in the water, they are detestable things to you. They shall be abhorrent to you. You may not eat of their flesh, or their carcasses you shall detest." And I thought about the love affair people have with lobster. And I don't know when we started saying, "Oh, we should eat lobster," but that was one of the things they couldn't eat.
Yeah.
And I had this thought. I wonder whether that was the allure of lobster comes in part because of anti-Semitism.
Interesting.
I don't know. It was just a thought I had, and not all thoughts I have are worth investigating and keeping. But it was just, to me, a strange thing. I'm thankful that in the New Testament we are told we can eat anything.
Yeah.
But just because we can eat everything doesn't mean we should eat everything in front of people. People for whom it is offensive.
Yeah.
So, just not sure you should offer lobster to your Jewish friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of these are just interesting to me. My Bible has footnotes at each one saying, like, the identity of many of these birds is uncertain. The identity of many of these fish is uncertain. Where it's listing out, for whatever reason, my Bible decided to call it the eagle, the bearded vulture, the black vulture. Lists off a bunch, but it says also, like, we don't actually know. It could mean anything.
Yeah.
Like, they had different names for things, and the people who were speaking this language aren't around anymore. So,
yeah, that's a good point.
I think that would be hard for me if I were a Jewish man to try and reconcile. Is like, we have these list of animals that I'm not allowed to eat, but no one knows what this list means.
Although they have developed their best guess of what they are.
Yeah.
And there are some themes. So the eagle, the vulture, the buzzard, the kite, and the falcon, the raven. These are all
birds of
carrion.
prey.
Carrion eaters. They eat meat. So there are some commonalities there that you can paint a broader picture and say maybe that's not one that I shouldn't be eating.
Yeah.
Then I skipped making any comment on chapter 12.
Chapter 12.
Chapter 12 is about motherhood and menstrual cycles and what the offering is sacrifices have to be with a male child and a female child. And
I did have a note. I thought it was interesting. The mother is unclean until he gets circumcised, if it's a male child. And I just thought that's an interesting idea that actually we saw with Moses in Exodus, that as they're coming back to Egypt, he's coming back to save the people, and his son is not circumcised, and he is sick to the point of death. It says that the Lord came after him to kill him, and his wife is able to have the wisdom, I guess, to know to circumcise his son and save him. Just that. But that's all. It's a short story of Moses gets sick, and his son gets circumcised, and he stops being sick. And just that this is a similar idea, that the mother is unclean until her son is clean too.
Right.
And I think to me that's part of this whole, this whole book, this whole message that I saw of, like, we're communal in our sins, and later on it says that if people are unclean, then their fathers are unclean. If you see a woman naked, you're seeing her husband naked.
Yeah.
And that if people are unclean for too long, the land will vomit them out.
Yeah.
Just that it's a very communal thing, that as a group we all need to be clean. We all need to be helping each other be clean. And and in that we can all help each other be forgiven.
Yep. Good observations. So we come into chapter 13, and I don't know where the first time it shows up, but it is, I think, in chapter 13 where we start talking about warp and woof. Does it say that in the English?
It does say that.
So I actually took a break from reading to find out what on earth is a warp and woof. And there's, it has to do with creating fabric. And when you create fabric, you have interlocking strands of threads, and so one of them is a warp, and the other one is the woof.
Oh,
So
okay.
Warp, woof, warp, woof, warp, woof.
Interesting.
Two.
And so it's two different fabrics, and
No, it's two different threads.
okay,
So the thread going one direction is the warp, going the other direction is the woof.
but it might be from two balls of yarn, because
Could be, yes.
what mine is saying is either in the warp or the woof, or in any article made of skin. So it seems like they could be only the warp has leprosy, or only the
Yes.
woof has leprosy.
Yep. So when you're reading it, you'll run into warp and woof, and now you know what it means.
Yeah.
But you might forget.
I thought, I mean, for me, I liked chapter 13, verse 40.
I did too.
That was my favorite one. If a man's hair falls out from his head, he is bald, he is clean. And you might be able to tell
Yep.
we are losing our hair. So,
And apparently I'm more clean than he is.
we've had more time for it to fall out.
Yep. I noted that also. That was a good observation. And let's see, chapter 14 it's a long chapter talking about leprosy and how they determine who has leprosy and that kind of stuff. And I think chapter 15 also deals with leprosy. And I wrote down here, it's a weird chapter. I don't know
That's
if
what you wrote down?
that was
For
for chapter 15.
15 is about bodily discharges. And it talks about
Oh, yeah.
if a woman has discharge, but also if a man has discharge. If a man has semen emitted from him, what should he do? If a woman comes in contact with that, just kind of weird stuff about maybe you're clean for a day, maybe you're unclean for a day, maybe you need to take a bath, maybe you need 7 days.
Yeah. And it doesn't tell you what a discharge is.
Yeah.
Although later in the chapter it talks about a seminal discharge,
Yeah.
which we have a pretty good idea what that is. But
But to me, it seems like it's like if you pop a zit or something.
yeah,
But I'm sure it's not just a normal small zit. Like, and maybe it is. But if you have some big, cyst or something that pops,
Right.
and there's all this gunk coming out of you, you're like, oh, that guy just discharged all over himself. I don't know.
don't want to see that. Don't want to see that. Moving on to chapter 16, the verses 29 and following, the annual Day of Atonement. There's, we celebrate Thanksgiving, we celebrate Christmas, we celebrate Easter, but we don't often celebrate and say, okay, this is a day when we're going to come together as a group and make a sacrifice for atonement. That would, as New Testament people, we would have a recognition that because of the sacrifice of Christ, our atonement has been made. And that's the case with a lot of the traditions, the festivals that are included. That
It's near to what we do for Easter,
Yeah.
but even then it's a little bit different. So.
Yeah. So chapter 17.
I thought that was interesting. You're not allowed to eat blood. It says blood is the life of every creature. And therefore God has said to the people, you shall not eat blood.
Yeah. Oh, and I pointed to verse 7 of this because there was suddenly this new thought that is only mentioned here.
Oh, yeah.
They shall no longer sacrifice their sacrifices to the goat demons with which they play the harlot.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, out of nowhere, come
Yeah.
these goat demons that we've been offering sacrifices to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's not do it anymore.
Yeah, they made the golden calf, and
Yeah.
maybe people have still been sacrificing to their goat overlords or something.
Yeah, that was just how that slips in. We don't know, but I recommend not sacrificing to goats.
Yeah, or to demons.
Yeah, or matter of fact, maybe not to anybody but God.
Yeah.
So then,
Unlawful sexual relations. We already talked about this a little bit, but the basic idea is only have sex with your wife. Anyone else, it's a sin.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's not even only have sex. It's don't see them naked.
Right.
Don't take off their clothes. Don't.
Think about it.
Yeah. Don't even approach a woman. At one point it says if a man approaches his father's sister. And I thought that was interesting terminology because, like, the way I would use the word approach, I would approach you to ask you a question.
Right.
But I wouldn't have this sexual innuendo in it. Maybe I
you don't
could
think
start
about
that. That could be funny.
Yeah, I can just see you saying, "Hey, Dad's going to approach you, Mom." She's not going to understand it, but I would. She'll probably watch this eventually.
Yeah, she watches this in a week or whatever.
Oh well. So in chapter 19, one of the things I noticed there is at verse 10. You shall not glean your vineyard, nor shall you gather fallen fruit from your vineyard. You shall leave them for the needy and for the stranger, for I am the Lord your God. Mm-hmm. Two things about that. I think it comes up again in no, that's a different section. But one thing is that we don't have to maximize profits. Mm-hmm. And the other is that by not maximizing profits, we care for the needy.
Yeah.
Not exactly Business 101. Mm-hmm. Business 101 says maximize profits.
Yeah.
God says you don't need to do that. You need to care for those in need.
Yeah, chapter 19 starts a recap of the Ten Commandments, it seems like.
Yeah.
And so many of them end with, in this chapter, do this so that you can take care of the poor and the sojourner, the foreigners, the people who are not from here. Yeah. I just think that's an interesting theme that's so powerful that, I don't know, I mean, right now there's a lot of political strife around how we are treating people that aren't from the United States. And it's like, the way God talks about it is, like, make sure you're taking care of them.
Yeah.
He doesn't say, make sure you kick them out as soon as possible, or you make sure that you are killing them if they're doing something wrong, but it's just take care of them. Make sure they have enough to eat. Invite them into your house. A difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
But interesting how important it seems to God. And how much he puts that on Israel too, of like, remember, you are sojourners. Like, I told you I'm giving you this land, but you haven't gotten it yet. So for now, you're still sojourners. You were sojourners for the last 400 years in Egypt. So just remember that and act like that's important.
In verse 18, you shall not take vengeance, nor bear any grudge against the sons of your people. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Not bear any grudge, not take vengeance. Yeah. It is pretty powerful for us at any time of life. Mm-hmm. In 28 and 29, you shall not make any cuts on your body for the dead, nor make any tattoo marks on yourselves. I am the Lord. What does that mean? What does that mean for our society where tattoos are cool?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like, to me, that in this culture, tattoos are about serving some god. And so what the Lord is saying is, I'm not requiring that of you. You don't have to tattoo yourself to show that you're my people. And in fact, he's saying, if you tattoo yourself, people will think you're one of these pagans who worship any sort of god. But
And that verse, if you read it carefully, you should not make any cuts in your body for the dead, nor make any tattoo marks on yourselves. It was probably common to cut and to give tattoos for the dead, as opposed to oftentimes people get tattoos for love, or just because they think they're cool.
yeah.
But there's not a spiritual statement being made. And let's see.
And I don't think that, the same way with the statutes against certain foods, it seems like that statute against tattoos, I don't recommend cutting yourself in any situation.
Yeah.
But tattoos, I think, are mostly fine. Like, it doesn't seem like in the New Testament we have these same rules against tattoos.
Right.
Just that, as in all things, we have to be careful how we present ourselves spiritually.
Yep. And how we relate to one another is important also. And I think that it would be erroneous of us to push back against somebody who has a tattoo on the basis of this verse. As far as I know, and I haven't read through the whole Bible, with this thought in mind, I think this is the only place where tattoos are talked about.
Right.
And it's dangerous to have hard and fast rules on the basis of one passage, and particularly dangerous if for those that do not have a tattoo, for instance, to hold those that have a tattoo to account because of this one verse. It's really easy to point to the guilt of others when they're doing something that you would never do.
Yeah.
Speaking of stuff that we should do, verse 32, you shall rise up before the gray-headed and honor the aged, and you shall revere your God. I am the Lord.
Mine says it different. You shall stand up before the gray head and honor the face of an old man.
Yeah.
So, I mean, same idea.
Yeah,
but I like honoring your face. That sounds funny.
Yes.
I don't care about the rest of you, but your face I'll honor.
It's interesting because whenever I get a haircut, I'm always amazed at how gray my hair is, because I never, when I look at it myself in the mirror, I see mostly just bare skull, bare skin. I don't see all the white hair that apparently is there.
Yeah, you have baldness of the forehead.
Yeah, I do. Anyway, just kind of interesting. And let's see, and that was 32.
I think actually go back to verse 17. You shall not hate your brother in your heart, but you shall reason frankly with your neighbor, lest you incur sin because of him. I just thought that was interesting because for me, there's this strong idea that, well, I don't know. Jesus says, you've heard it said, do not murder your brother. But I say to you, whoever hates your brother has murdered him in his heart. And it's like Jesus wasn't even, some of the times Jesus is saying things that are not in here.
Right.
Where he's expanding on it. But this time Jesus is just saying, you guys should have read this. Don't hate your brother.
Yep. Let's see. Chapter 20 is about human sacrifices, and I didn't have anything that stuck out at me in that chapter.
Human sacrifices?
Yeah, human sacrifices and immoralities. That is the giving their kids to Moloch. That's a reference to human sacrifice.
Okay.
And then again, there's issues of sexuality in that chapter as well. So in chapter 21, I went to verse.
Actually, at the end of chapter 20, it says, I have a section titled "You Shall Be Holy," and
Okay.
I just think that's interesting. because there's a section at the beginning of chapter 19, the Lord is holy. And just that the Lord is holy, this set apart. And what it means for him to be holy, he says, "You shall be holy for the Lord, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. Every one of you shall revere his mother and his father and keep my Sabbaths. I am the Lord your God." But then now we have, "You shall be holy." A separate idea, even though it stems from this statement in chapter 19 of, "You shall be holy, for I am holy." Now it's God saying, "You shall therefore keep all my statutes and all my rules and do them, that the land where I am bringing you to live may not vomit you out." Just interesting imagery. I'm thinking of a verse in a future book where people are eaten up by the land. But, now it's saying, "I'm bringing you to live so that the land may not vomit you out."
Yeah.
And that the land vomited out these other people that were living there because they were unholy, because they were unclean. And I just like that idea that God wants us to be holy. That
You are to be holy, for I, the Lord, am holy. Verse 26.
Yeah.
You are to be holy.
Mine says, "You shall be holy to me, for the Lord."
Yeah,
for I, the Lord, am
actually
holy."
it said that.
Yeah, I just like that also, that it's not just holy, set apart in the world, but holy and set apart for God, to God.
So chapter 21 talks about the rules for the priests, and 22 does also. Interesting point about priests, verse 13, "He shall take a wife in her virginity." That priests are supposed to marry virgins. And it's specific, not a widow or a divorced woman, but a virgin. So then let's go to chapter 22.
I like chapter 21 verses 18 and 19 just because I think it's a little bit funny. "For no one who has a blemish shall draw near, a man blind or lame, or has a mutilated face, or a limb too long, or a man who has an injured foot or an injured hand." I just think that's funny. If your arm is too long, you can't go into the presence of God.
As a priest in the tabernacle. Which is in keeping with the mandate to bring unblemished sacrifices to him.
Yeah. What I don't like is now he starts talking about crushed testicles.
Yeah.
And I don't like that imagery.
Well,
And how often was that happening?
That's what I was going to go. How many? This is important enough that they have to make a point about crushed
Multiple
testicles.
times. That priests can't have crushed testicles, but also you can't sacrifice an animal that has crushed testicles.
Yep. Let's see, 22 verse 24. What did I say there? Yeah, that was the crushed testicles. Bruised or crushed or torn or cut.
Yeah. At least for animals, like you could have a pet dog and have them neutered.
Right. I wonder if they did that back in those days.
I'm not sure, but you have to imagine that yes, they did, because that's an option that they're saying don't sacrifice.
I'd say, they jumped over a barbed wire fence, but there weren't any barbed wire fences then.
But you'd have to imagine that they were trying to do some population control at least some of the time, and maybe that's the way they did it. So just grab them and crush them.
Chapter 23 talks about religious festivals. I didn't pull any of that specific out.
I think for me, I was noticing it in Exodus. I didn't mention it, but here I'm noticing it too. The Sabbath and the Passover are extremely tied together.
Yep.
That on the seventh day you shall do no work, and it's a Sabbath. And then always right after we talk about the Sabbath, we want to talk about the Passover. That for God, the two most important things that people should celebrate are like the seventh day of creation, where he's sleeping, and then where he's resting. Yeah, that is true. Orthodox Jews would be mad if I said he was sleeping, because God doesn't sleep. He
Right.
just rests and doesn't bring anything over his shoulders, and that's why on the Sabbath you're allowed to work, just don't bring anything over your shoulders. But then the next most important thing is the Passover, where
Right.
where Israel is brought out of Egypt, but in kind of a terrible, horrible way. Of an angel of death is going to come and pass over anyone that has lamb's blood on their doorpost.
Chapter 24, there's a story about an Egyptian and a Israeli wife, and it's summarized really, I think, in verse 22. There shall be one standard for you; it shall be for the stranger as well as the native, for I am the Lord your God.
Yeah.
You don't have different standards for different people.
Yeah, for me, I mean, it's so easy for me to think of Jesus and his parables when I'm reading this. But especially this, it just made me think of the way Jesus talks about Samaritans, the way Jesus talks about anyone who's not like a purebred Jew.
Yeah.
That Jesus says, like, actually, this is for everyone. And this is another place where God is doing that, where he's saying, actually, yeah, I have called your people holy, and that does mean you're set apart, but I'm a God for all people at all times.
Yeah. Chapter 25 talks about the year of Jubilee and selling of property and how it's redeemed, and some very interesting points there that you some property, particularly property in a walled city. So you have a house in a walled city, you sell that and the deed transfers over to someone else. You sell a house in a village without a walled city, and after 50 years, at the year of Jubilee, it reverts back to the original owner. Interesting dynamics on that, and also in that, it seems like the selling of property, you always had the opportunity to redeem that property. You could sell it, and then a year later you could redeem it, and you make recompense for it, and there are ways to calculate how much you should pay to get it back, and that kind of stuff. The whole year of Jubilee is a fascinating concept that we don't even think in terms of that.
Yeah. I mean, 50 years is a long time. It's twice my lifetime. And, it could be, for a lot of people it would be,
Yep.
that, you're 20 years old and you have this year of Jubilee come. And I guess if you're born on the year of Jubilee, you might not have it until you're 50.
Right.
But just interesting that it's, this also is tied to the Passover, that chapter 25 starts with the Sabbath year, that on the seventh year you're not going to be growing crops because you want to give the land a rest. And then after it is, now let's talk about the year of Jubilee, that after you've done that 7 times, now it goes back to its original owner, that now you shall consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land.
Interesting, as you mentioned that, if the first year of Jubilee is when you're 10, you could probably have 2 of them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're 30 or 40 when at the year of Jubilee,
Yeah, you might not get another one.
You're not going to get another one, which is part of the reason that land the deed of the land passed on to the next generation. Interesting that part of the justification for that is because God owns the land.
Yeah.
It's really not your land; it's God's land.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too. It's like, don't trick yourself into thinking that you own the land, because it really is God's.
Yeah. Chapter 26 deals with the blessings of obedience and the punishment for disobedience. And some of those things are kind of scary. The blessings are really nice. You want to receive the blessings. But you don't want to have the curses. I'm just going to hit a few of those. In 17, I will set my face against you so that you will be struck down before your enemies, and those who hate you will rule over you. And this is the thing which he hits 3 or 4 times. You will flee when no one is pursuing you. Yeah. He says the same thing in verse 36.
They shall fall when none pursues.
Yeah.
It's not even that you're running away from nothing, but you're going to fall down.
Yep. And again, it's the same thing in verse 37. Though no one is pursuing, you will keep on running from the sword. You have no strength to stand up before your enemies, and your enemies are imaginary.
Yeah.
There's nobody there. The judgment of God is scary. And it seems like, the reason that he has those judgments is because he wants to draw us back to obedience. and as it says in that chapter, that the purpose is to bring you back. And if you don't, then we're going to keep this going and keep it going. So verse 44, this is the cap of it. You have the blessings of obedience and the penalty of disobedience. And then he says, in spite of this, when they are in the land of their enemies, I will not reject them, nor will I abhor them as to destroy them, breaking my covenant with them, for I am the Lord your God. I will remember for them the covenant with their ancestors. So God brings discipline in order to bring us back to him. He never forgets us.
Yeah, and it points back to in Exodus. 3 or 4 times it said that God is a God who blesses for 1,000 generations and has steadfast love for 1,000 generations and curses for 3 or 4. So the same idea that he's going to give you these curses for disobedience, and maybe it does mean you run away from your home and you're raising your kids somewhere else and they raise their kids somewhere else. But for all that, when they are in the land of their enemies, God will not spurn them, and he will remember the covenant.
Yeah.
Just how powerful that is, and how it paints God as so loving and kind, and so full of justice.
Yeah. So my last thought was from chapter 27, verse 30, where it talks about the tithe of the land. That we often want to make excuses why we don't have to tithe. But the tithe is embedded in Scripture. So thus ends my observations and thoughts about the book of Leviticus. How about you?
Yeah, I don't have any more thoughts. Just, I like the way that it ends. These are the commandments that the Lord commanded Moses for the people of Israel on Mount Sinai. Just that it's a powerful ending to a book that is traditionally hard to read. That if you ask someone, what do you not like about the Bible, or what's hard for you to read in the Bible, they'll tell you, oh, Leviticus, it's so hard, it's so tough to get through. But, it's still full of the Lord's commandments and still full of his love.
Yes, I was going to say, and his love and his forgiveness. All right, we'll hit you next time with the book of Numbers.